Hi friends, it's been way too long since we've had a proper book chat on this channel, so today we're changing that and doing it in style by talking about my favorite books of 2024. In the last year, I read a grand total of 61 books, and while it may not have been my greatest reading year number-wise, I feel like in terms of the quality of the books that I've read, I was able to find some true gems, some new all-time favorites that I just loved. I have 9 books to share with you today and a few honorable mentions, so grab yourselves a cozy little drink, a blanket, let's get comfortable and talk about books. So before we dive into my actual top 9 favorite books of the year, I always like to share a few honorable mentions, books that I loved but did not necessarily have that favorite quality that I was looking for. First, we have Bride and Not in Love by Miss Ali Azawood. Then we have Yours Truly by Javi Jimenez, Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Yes, I'm one of those girlies. 7 Days in June by Tia Williams, and The X-Files by Jessica Joyce. So all of these were amazing and would absolutely recommend all of them, but as I mentioned, they did not have that top favorite quality that I was looking for. And now, without further ado, let's dive into my 9 favorite books of 2024. I want to mention that none of these are ranked. I love them all equally. I could not rank them for the life of me. Some years I like to do a top 10. This year I just couldn't. First we have Heart Song by TJ Klune. I love TJ Klune. Every year he makes it to my list of favorites of the year, and I'm so incredibly excited that this year solidified TJ Klune as a new all-time favorite author with this book specifically. This is book 3 in the Wolf Song series. I read all of this during 2023 and 2024. And this one is my absolute favorite. I love the entire series. It's a paranormal romance. We have werewolf, it's queer, love it. It follows Robbie, and I cannot go deeper into the plot because I would be spoiling it, but this story was so incredibly beautiful, yet so heartbreaking. I laughed, I cried. This book was just perfect. It had the perfect mix of plot and character development. I just loved the way that the relationship evolved and developed. I cannot recommend it enough, though I will be honest, the writing can be a little bit jarring at first because it's so peculiar in the way that it's written, but once you read it you'll understand. I absolutely recommend this whole series, but this one more specifically. The second book on my list is none other than Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. This is the second book to Divine Rivals, which also got a 5 stars out of me. This duology is incredible. I get the hype and I love these UK editions. They're so pretty. I'm obsessed. Anyway, Divine Rivals follows 2 rival journalists during what I would assume would be the First World War, but it has this fantasy element to it because there's these gods that are involved. Anyway, our protagonists are sent to the front to report on what is happening during this war. It is one of the most beautiful, heartbreaking stories that I've ever read. I absolutely loved it. I feel like if you love Lovely War by Julie Berry, read this. This is so freaking good. The writing is impeccable. I fell in love with our 2 main characters. The story was just so beautiful. It took me really through a full range of emotions. I feel like this ending really did it justice. I was afraid picking it up because I loved Divine Rivals, read it in 24 hours, and I was a little bit afraid that this wouldn't live up to the hype. It wouldn't live up to the expectations that I had built up in my head, seeing how much I had enjoyed Divine Rivals, but oh my god, I loved it. It has so many plot twists that had me gasping, nearly crying. It is simply incredible. Pick it up. You will not be disappointed. Next on my list is You With a View by Jessica Joyce. I'm so glad that I discovered Jessica Joyce this year. I read this one and The X-Files. While this one might be my favorite, both of them were simply incredible. I love her writing. She's so great at conveying emotion and at creating characters that just feel 3-dimensional, but this one just had this little something extra that made me fall in love with it. Basically, this is a high school rivals to lover story with a road trip element. Say less, right? Our 2 main characters' grandparents had fallen in love back in the day. They were supposed to elope, but life got in the way and they ended up marrying other people. And so when our main character Noelle finds out about all of this, she decides to recreate the trip that her grandmother never went on. That's how she finds out that Theo is the grandson of the man that her grandmother almost married. And they join the trip and do this together. It was so good, you guys. I absolutely loved it. It reminded me a lot of Letters to Juliet. I feel like Jessica Joyce really was able to do this story justice. It had me written all over it, and I cannot believe it took me this long to read it. Absolutely fell in love with it. Jessica Joyce is now one of my auto-buy authors, and I cannot wait to read more from her. This wouldn't be a favorites of the year video if I didn't talk about one Emily Henry book, and this year I read Happy Place. Let me say, I was not expecting this one to make the list. I don't know why. I had been told that this one was more for people who enjoyed People We Meet on Vacation. This is the only Emily Henry book that I did not love. I was a little bit hesitant because of that diving into this one because it was a little bit more of a second chance love story, which is usually not my cup of tea. And yet, of course, Emily Henry did it again, and she's now one of my all-time favorite authors thanks to this book. We're following two characters who used to be together but broke up, but their friends don't know. So when they're invited to a group event, they decide to pretend that they're still together in order to not ruin the whole weekend for their friends. How can I talk about this book? I feel like I will not be doing it justice because this one just took my heart, ripped it out of my chest, and Emily Henry just pressed until it hurt. I just fell in love with these characters, this place, the plot. It was just perfect. And I feel like this is one of those books where you have to read it for yourself to understand. But at the same time, I know it's not everyone's cup of tea because I've seen the reviews, but this one just worked for me. I don't know how to explain it, but if you have similar reading taste to me, I think you might enjoy this one. I don't know if it's my favorite Emily Henry because I do love beach read and book lovers. If it's not my favorite, I think it would be second favorite. Maybe. I just love the chaotic plot, the characters, the friends vibes. It just felt very relevant for the time of life that I'm in right now. Once again, Emily Henry can really convey emotion and create characters that feel real. I cannot wait to continue reading more from her because I know she has great things in store. We have another author entering the top favorite authors of the year, I guess. I binge read everything she has written in the adult world and just fell in love with her writing. We have Ashley Boston with The Dead Romantics and A 7-Year Slip. Both of these were so incredible. Let me talk about The Dead Romantics first. This one follows a ghostwriter who ends up falling in love with her editor who has just passed away. I read this one in the month of November, and let me tell you, this was the perfect time to read it. It has autumnal vibes. It follows a main character who can see ghosts. Most of the story takes place in a funeral home and like the cemetery because our main character's family works in that world. And overall, it just has this spooky vibe. So if you're looking for something a little different to read this autumn, this one is definitely up there. It just proved to me that Ashley Boston can write romances that seem impossible and yet they work. Every time I'm picking one of her books, I'm like, how can those two characters end up together? They have everything stacked against them. She always finds a way to make it seem possible. And I'll be honest, I'm a sucker for that. I just love the way she writes her characters. I also like the whimsy that always finds her way in her books. I can see why she became an author that people fell in love with. And then I read The 7-Year Slip. So this one follows a book publicist who falls in love with her temporary roommate who lived 7 years in the past. Once again, another impossible love story, and you're like, how can this work? Let me tell you, it does. I loved the vibes of this one. Once again, I feel like she's really great at creating this atmosphere, and this one just solidified that for me. It takes place in the heat of summer in this small New York apartment. It has like cooking elements because our love interest is a chef or an aspiring chef. Out of the two, I think this one is my favorite. This is the one that kind of made me truly fall in love with Ashley Boston. I just love her writing. I will say that again. I love her writing. Let's switch it up from the romance for a little bit and talk about my next favorite read, which is Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone by Benjamin Stevenson. So a little bit different, not a romance, obviously. We're talking about a mystery thriller, and I'm usually not a mystery girly unless it's a closed door mystery. And this one is a closed circle. Obviously, as the title would suggest, we have a cast of characters where everyone has killed someone. I love the concept of this. In theory, this one sounded perfect for me, but in actuality, it was more than perfect because what I did not know, the way that it's written is so incredible. I just really loved how meta it felt sometimes because the main character, who is the narrator and the author of the story, will tell you things like, oh, on page 55, someone dies. I wasn't expecting it to be written this way, but I found that this was something that I really appreciated. And also the plot of this kept me on my toes the whole time. I loved the vibes as well. It's taking place on the snowy mountains. I feel like it would be perfect to cozy up to during the winter season. And the ending just really took me by surprise. I was not expecting it to take this turn. Overall, I would say this is a solid mystery. I get why a lot of people enjoyed it when it came out. Talking about books that I was not expecting to love, let's talk about Practice Makes Perfect by Sarah Adams. So I read both books set in this world. We have When in Rome and Practice Makes Perfect, and this one was my favorite. But what I did not expect was to cry as much as I did while I was reading this. I don't know why I connected so much with our protagonists. Both of them were following a flower shop girl, well, a girl who owns a flower shop, and a bodyguard. Sarah Adams just knows how to write a good romance. And yeah, it's closed door, but I still loved it. I really loved the intimacy between our two characters. I feel like she really was able to make this relationship blossom without depending on a physical relationship. Their emotional connection was just incredible. I was rooting for these two characters from the start, and I was seeing myself so much in those two characters that I bawled my eyes out like several times. I had to put the book down to just go and cry for like 15 minutes because I couldn't endure it. And it's not like the book is sad, it's just that I saw myself so much, and whenever I saw those characters act in a certain way or talk to themselves in a certain way, I just related. For that reason alone, I know it's a favorite. If I cry while reading your book, there's a good chance it's a favorite because that means that it makes me feel something, and this one did. And the last book on my list is another one that kind of took me by surprise because this is not a book that I had on my radar at all, and if it hadn't been for Books and Lala, I would never have found it. And that is Maybe This Time by Cara Bastone. So as I said before, I found this book purely by chance. I saw that it was nominated for a Goodreads award for the audiobook category, and Books and Lala talked about it, read it, and mentioned that it was narrated by Nora Reid, who is in Schitt's Creek. And I was like, okay, that's it, I'm sold. I don't even care. I'm sold. I'm gonna listen to this book. But then I found out that the premise is about a girl who falls through a wormhole and is able to contact someone in the past because she is now, I think it's 85 years in the future, and together they work to kind of make sure that she doesn't fall through the wormhole in the first place. The story itself is okay. I mean, it's great. I love the way Cara Bastone writes her characters. However, what really made this experience incredible is the audiobook production. This felt like you were listening in on a conversation that was happening in real life. The sound effects, the way that the characters like kind of talked over one another as if it was a real conversation happening on the phone, it really kept me immersed in the story. I was captivated. I could not stop listening. So if you're looking for a new audiobook, honestly, this one I would highly recommend. It was so freaking good. So that is it. This is my list of favorites from 2024. Let me know what you guys read this year, and if you have any favorites, do we have any in common? Do you have any recommendations for me? And I guess that's it, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!